I'm super excited as always when I have guests on, but Jo, that's the guest today, it's taken some time. We had to meet in London this January, but that was the second time we met in real life. Because I've followed Jo on her journey and always how she talks about value-led business and the power of feedback and putting people first in your business really is the competitive edge if you want to succeed now and as you develop a new business and go into the future. So welcome to the show, Jo. I'm super excited about today's conversation.
And I'm super excited to be here because likewise, I've followed your journey and seen what you're doing on LinkedIn. So when I met you, I was a bit like fangirly. It's like, oh, here's somebody that I've never met before, but I know about them. And I've seen what they're doing. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's always interesting when you follow people on LinkedIn and then you finally meet to have the real life conversation. And you find out, there's so many other connections and how we could talk about something. But today we wanted to talk about, the power value-led business and why it's a competitive edge, but also the magic of having a structured approach to making sure that everybody gets the feedback they need to do well in their jobs.
Yeah, that's right. What does good look like for each individual and for businesses as a whole?
Yeah. And before we do that, I think it would be really good for the audience just to understand a bit about your journey.
Yeah.
And background and why you can talk about these things and the businesses you're involved in that helps to solve these challenges for hospitality operators.
Yeah, sure. So I started my career in hospitality, like most people, kind of accidentally. I think a lot of people that are in hospitality or work around the industry started their career, by walking in somewhere or starting to work part-time somewhere and then just falling in love with it. And that's exactly what happened. I'd been working in Greece for 2 summers, came back, was told by my parents that I needed to get a proper job. And they sent me off down to a job centre and I looked at the job centre, I turned around, I looked at a pub that was across the road and I walked into the pub across the road and I said, please, can I have a job? And they gave me one. And I loved it, loved working behind the bar. And at this point I was looking for a graduate job and not really succeeding, not really putting my heart and soul into it. And the area manager at the time came around and asked if I wanted to participate in the graduate scheme that Allied Domecq at that point. Most of your listeners won't even remember, but pub company back in the day, and asked if I wanted to go on the graduate scheme to fast track to become area manager. And I worked for 2 properly old school pub sort of landlord and landlady, we called them in those days. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't tell people like these people how to run their business unless I've actually done it myself. And so I said, whilst I would love to do that, actually, I want to go into it a different way. I'd like to have my own pub first. So I trained and had a license at 25 and was running a pub in Basingstoke with pool tables and meat raffles on a Sunday and everyone getting drunk on Stella. And it was super, super fun. And then that organisation got bought by somebody else, and I decided that actually area management had far too much like telling other people what to do and figures involved with it. And I wanted to sort of be in the people world, but there weren't any job openings there. And nobody really took the time to understand what I was about. When we had business reviews, it was very, very much about what are the figures, not how are you, Jo? What would you like to do with your life? That kind of thing. So I then went and worked for Bacardi, where I had the best time of my life, living in a flat with 2 other girls who also worked for Bacardi and going and sort of selling into independent bars, restaurants in London, which was great experience. And I certainly learned how to sell stuff at that point in my life. And it wasn't a hard product to sell. But again, nobody necessarily showed any interest in me or the girls I lived with beyond, have you had effective calls and what are your figures this week? And they cared about us, they did, but there was no real conversation about career progression. And certainly, you might have an end of year review, but it was pretty sketchy to say the least. And both those organizations, I'm a true Gen X girl, both those organizations I would have stayed with way, way longer if either of those had had that type of conversation with me. So I met a woman called Jane Sunley, who'd just started a business called Learn Purple at the time, back in the early 2000s, when she'd come out of recruitment, but also within hospitality. And I found the job in the back of the Caterer magazine, when there was an actual magazine and there were actual job adverts in the back of the magazine. I thought, hey, this looks like something that I could really get behind. I want to help organizations to get the right people in the first place. How do we develop them once they're there? And how do we then retain people once they're in the organization? And so I started a 20-year journey of working with Jane, doing just those things through a number of different methods, from technology through to consultancy, through to we did a lot of development at some point. We worked with a lot of outside experts to help us put in development programs for people, but all with this idea that we want to help organizations be great places to work. And through that time, we developed a piece of technology and at that point it was called Talent Toolbox. And post-pandemic, myself and two of the developers, we had a discussion with Jane, and we wanted to update the technology. Jane wanted to step back a bit, so we took the technology and started the business Korero in 2023, beginning of 2023. And Jane, at that point, she wanted to spend more time with her family, but still wanted to do some consultancy stuff. And so we started a business called Hendrick and Hyde as well. So I've got two businesses, both very small, but really enjoy what we do. So Hendrick and Hyde is all around the employee experience. So helping organizations with things like their purpose, their values, their behaviors, looking at leadership. We work with a lot of senior leadership teams in bringing them together as a team, using psychometrics to help them do that, and help them put in place process around the employee experience. And then Korero, the technology, that's all about having really great conversations with your people about their careers. So all about giving them really good feedback on their performance, what good looks like, around their well-being, around how happy they are. We can ask anything. So the technology is such that I work with our clients to understand, what does good performance look like here? What does good potential look like here? And then we can have those conversations, record them, and then report on it. So from an employee perspective, it allows people to drive their own careers. From a leader's perspective, it gives you the framework in which to have really good conversations with people about them. And from the business perspective, it gives you analytics that enable you to inform people's strategy and be able to understand what's going on in the business in terms of succession, development, well-being, and where hotspots are and what you might want to do about them.
That's so super interesting, because what I can hear from your journey is that the frustration as an employee early on, you then taken on a long journey, and then you come out with the platform that actually gets get it all in one go, to the tool the managers needed to have these conversations. So talk a bit about, what is the biggest pain point you think you're solving for people? What is the number one?
I mean, I think it's that the end result is retention, because we know that so we did research, and this stands up, and a lot of big consultancies, Blessing White, Towers Watson, Josh Bersin, all talk to the same points, that broadly, if people are communicated with in an adult to adult way, if they have career paths that are, with the communication as well, they understand what's going on in the business, and they feel a part of it. If they have individualized development, so if you're developing people, it needs to be about them, not just about, you're at this level, therefore you go on this course or whatever. It's about continuous learning all the time and really understanding individuals' requirements and where those gaps are. If you're showing people super clear career pathways, so it doesn't matter whether you can get them there as a business, but where do they want to be? And is there anything that you can do right now to help them get there that would also benefit your business? That's three. Thirdly, inspirational leadership. So people work for people, we all know that, But, what does it mean to be an inspiring leader and somebody that people want to look up to and they respect and they want to emulate? So inspirational leadership. And then also to have values that are aligned to that of the business. If you hit those 5 points, then pay drops down. And if you're paying people a comparable level, people will stay with you if you're in the organization that also hits those 5 things. You could go next door and not get any of those things. And maybe they offer a cycle to work scheme, or you get free ice cream on a Friday. And those things sound great. Oh, yeah, we get to stay for drinks, or sometimes we get donuts. Brilliant. However, it's these fundamental things that most people want to see if they want to sort of make a career with you and move up within the organization, if you want to retain people. So I'd say that for Korero, it really is sort of taking a step back and sort of saying, well, we want to be an organization that cares about its people. We want to be an organization where we understand individuals. I talk a lot about the individualization of the employee experience, and that's super hard to do at scale. So I suppose it's that about retention and individualization. I think they're the things that we're solving.
And it's quite interesting because lots of people will probably say, well, there's nothing new in this.
No, there's not. People aren't doing it properly.
Good. So I don't even have to answer. So what is it that you see typical when you go in and work with a client? And it could be you come in from the consultancy on the employee experience, or through the wish to have a platform to communicate and understand individual employees. Let's say you have 500 employees. As the CEO, you'll lose touch of that. I've been in a business where you went from 50 to 250, and knowing everybody's name suddenly becomes quite a mission impossible. Yeah. So what is it that you learned there when you go in, and why is it that we don't want to, but why is it that we are struggling to get it right? Because there is some people, and some of them has been on the podcast that's actually following this, and these ideas are not new. As I say, they are in the book Good to Great. That's by Jim Collins. There's similar ideas about the first bit is all about people and understanding them and helping them to become successful. Then it's in the service profit chain that talks about exactly in the same way you talk about make work and support people. And all these things are free. But why is it that we don't do them?
I think there are a couple of reasons. The first one is operationally, people are too busy. That's the excuse that I get. We're too busy. It's another thing. And often it's seen as like a thing that HR are making us do. And also what we do, I suppose, could be viewed by some as being an appraisal, and nobody ever got excited about an appraisal ever. So, we absolutely don't call it that. This concept of an old-fashioned once-a-year conversation talking about performance against a number of competencies that nobody really understands what they mean anyway, that's so outdated. And so I think people often think, well, either, you have an option of not doing anything at all, or doing it how it used to be back in the sort of 80s and early 90s. And that's not the case now. People do want more real-time feedback. And so the biggest challenges, I'd say, are people think they're too busy. My argument to that would be, if you haven't got time once a quarter to take a step back with every employee for an hour, then, so what are you doing in a people business? Where everybody says hospitality, people first, we put our people first, our people are really important to us. But what we do know, and I know this from doing best places to work in hospitality, we run a survey behind the caterers' best places to work in hospitality. And the number one reason that people come to work is being in a positive and welcoming environment. And the second is working for a company that cares about its people. And actually, really showing you care about somebody isn't necessarily running past them on a Monday morning and saying, oh, how was your weekend? Or how's your cat? It's sitting down and saying, tell me more about you. Tell me what you want to do with your life. Let me understand where you've been so far. It's taking the time to do stuff, and people are really short on time. And certainly post-COVID, they think it's a waste of time to have that time, if you see what I mean. So I think that's probably the biggest thing we come up against, is the perception of not having time. The second one is the number of times I've heard people say, I don't need to use a platform to know my people, which is all very well. And most people would say that. But my challenge there would be, have you 100% sat down with them and understood where there might be a development gap? Do you know exactly what they want to do with their career and that you're both on the same page towards getting them there? Do you really know what's going on at home with them at the moment? Are they physically, mentally strong and capable to be at work? Has something happened at home that you might not be aware of, that just a little conversation or a little nudge might help them open up to you? There's so many things that go on with people, and we just make assumptions based on face value. It's a classic story, isn't it? If people are late every day, you don't tell them off for being late. You sit down with them and you sort of say, how can I help? How can I help you not be late? Is it that the buses don't necessarily run to the right timetable? Is it that you need to get someone to school? Or is it that you need to get your dog to a doggy daycare, or whatever it might be? It's again about having that sort of individual conversation about stuff and not making assumptions. And that takes time. And it's very easy to get caught up in the operational and like, oh, what did he say yesterday and what happened on that shift there and what's happening here, and not sit down and really understand the person.
Yeah, and it's super interesting when you I mentioned the service profit chain, and we looked at successful business in there. So I did a piece about 14 years ago in McDonald's, and it was not just me, but we're a group of people looking at how do we actually make work, because if we do that, we will get better internal performance and productivity, and then we have happier customers, and it actually ended out with that we had double-digit growth, and we became the best place to work in Denmark, not just in hospitality.
Wow.
In Denmark for 3 years. It's unheard that McDonald's did that, and people always asked me, what is it what you did? What is the one thing you did? I said, it's not one thing, but actually what happened was that actually leaders and people got better relationship. And in principle, we called them performance tools and in an HR point of view, but actually they were conversation tools, more conversation tools from recruitment to the way you say goodbye to people. And it was not perfect, but it just created more structured conversation, because lots of people don't know how to have a good conversation to build relationship, is my experience. And it's really about the quality of relationship, isn't it?
It totally is. And I think, we've talked about it a lot, certainly post-COVID, about a lack of leadership capability, and that people are being promoted because they're really, really good at their jobs. But what they're not necessarily good at is now your job is absolutely understanding, engaging, developing and retaining the people that you're responsible for. And it's really easy to slip back into, I see somebody not doing something properly, and therefore I'm just going to whiz in and do it because that helps them in the moment and that makes me a bit of a hero, and hey, I'm in my comfort zone, I know I'm good at this. What's much harder is to have a difficult conversation with somebody and sort of say, hey, I noticed this was happening, and how can I help you be better, and is there something that we need to do to adjust things to make it so you can now do this and not have to rely on me. And I think that gets missed so much from that step between being a really good operator into being a really good leader. And there's lots of things you can do about that. Lots of brilliant organizations out there that help people become first-time leaders. What our tool does is that when you need to have a type of conversation, whether it's, week 1, week 4, week 12, through the sort of the induction period, whether it's, quarterly, whether it's about goals, whether it's about their well-being, whether it's about performance, it's giving a structure to that conversation. So for first-time managers that have never done it before, it becomes like, oh, okay, I get that. If I ask this question, it will open up a whole wealth of, conversation I might not have had anyway. It's that classic, if you walk somebody and say, how are you? They're probably going to say fine. But if you stop somebody and say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling today? 1 being absolutely dreadful and 10 being the best I've ever felt ever. If they give you a 10, high five, walk on. Anything else, it's like, gosh, well, what would make you a 10 today? And it might not be anything that you can do, but it's something towards, okay, that might be something at work that you can help with. That might be something at home that now you can support with. That might be, I'm never going to answer for 10 about anything. Okay, fine. But, it just opens a different depth of conversation. And it's about I always say, asking why. And I think I do my team's head in, because I'm always asking, why are we doing it like this? And why is this happening? And why is that? And that's not interrogating. That's, which I think they think it is sometimes. That's trying to get understanding. It's like, why are we here? And I think that's one of the most important things, bringing it back to your point at the beginning and what you did in McDonald's. I imagine that everybody in the business, you had a very, very clear sort of guiding light or an end point that everybody was going towards, and everybody's going in the same direction. My friend Jodie told me the other day, a brilliant analogy, which is, if you imagine engagement being people sitting in a boat and rowing, and the actual rowing, that's the skills you do. But actually, if you sing at the same time, that's the engagement, because you're rowing, but you're singing, and you're rowing and you're singing, and you're all pulling in the same direction. Now imagine that there's somebody at the front of the boat that can see where the boat's going. And now imagine that there are 6 boats, which are different departments or different sites, and everybody's rowing. Now, if the person at the front of that boat that can see in the distance isn't rowing towards the same thing, you're going to have people crashing into each other. You're going to have conflict. You're going to get tangled up oars. People are going to start shouting at each other. And, I just thought it was such a good analogy. And, you get people that, are rowing really fast and have got the skills, but they're not singing because they're knackered and they just can't be bothered anymore. And you've got people that, are singing the song, but, they're wearing their oars up and down and they're not necessarily doing anything. And the boats that are super engaged, or, the people in the boats that are super engaged, are those where everybody's rowing in the same direction, everybody's singing the song, and the person at the front of that boat knows exactly where they're going. And everybody, all the boats, know exactly where they're going. And I think that's when we say have a company purpose, but for me, having a really strong purpose and everybody's behind that is just super, super key. Why are people getting out of bed in the morning to come and work for you? If that is because you aspire to be the world's greatest, make the world's greatest burger, or be the coolest pizza chain that ever existed. People hook onto that. They want to be part of that journey, part of that story. It's really sort of getting inside, what makes you get up in the morning? Why is it exciting to be here? What's different about you to somebody down the road? They're all things that can give you competitive advantage as an employer. I've gone off a complete tangent there. Don't know. No,
because I think this is really interesting, because we didn't start there. And actually, we come back and look at some of or even if I took myself back to McDonald's, believe it or not, actually, we spent quite a long time figuring out where we go, where we looked at a lot of data, and we didn't have smart platforms. There's a lot of spreadsheet and customers' data, employee surveys we had still. Then we started connecting the patterns, and we had actually a statistician from a business school in Lancaster, a professor in psychology and statistics, help us analyzing our organization, actually understanding first before we took action.
Yes.
So we did at a period where we just fixed the fundamentals. Yes, we have the equipment and it works and blah, 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 daily operation. But then actually we went into a bit more sophisticated, because it's a complex thing. Yes. Business is complex. Hospitality is complex. So actually, the most important thing, if you want to survive and actually be successful, is getting clarity of purpose and direction. And funny enough, we've done more than 300 interviews now on the podcast, and we are starting coming up the 7 tenets. And tenet number 1, you have to do that, or else the rest of the tenet doesn't matter, is clarity of purpose and direction. Yeah. And that's involved then, as you say, and I agree with you, is the vision, the strategies, the values, the behaviors, whatever you call it, your culture. You can define it as you want, but you're very clear about that, and you know where you're going as a business the next year, 3 years, 5 years. And I don't know, I know you love a tool to call the EOS system, the entrepreneurial operating system. I'm a very big fan of that. I've used that in some situation, others I've used others. But the elements that's in there is actually what you need to tell people about. Where are we going and how are we going to do that? And it doesn't mean that it's going to be like that, but you definitely have a bigger chance to get everybody on board and get there if you can articulate that. And it takes some time, but when you've done that, the whole employee journey, the whole operation is going to be much easier to adjust or develop if that's needed.
And it becomes much less personal, right? Because
Yeah.
it's very clear about this is how we do things here and this isn't how we do things here. Then it's never personal. It's just, actually, this isn't how we do it. And if you can't live with that, then that's okay. But go and find somewhere where there's, something that you can live with. And that becomes a much easier conversation to have than when it's all a bit up in the air. And I think for us, we've always said, so if your purpose or mission, vision, value, whatever you call it, is your why, then your what is what's important to us here. What are the things that are important to us that make us stand out, that make us different from anyone else? So in Korero, I'll use us as an example. So our purpose is better conversations, better careers, better lives. And then we've got 3 values that underpin those, which are credibility, care, and positivity. And that's the sort of the personalities of us as founders, but also what we want to stand for in a marketplace, in a crowded tech marketplace, where we, if somebody talks about us, we would love them to say, oh, they're super positive. We've just employed Phil Street, who I don't know if you know Phil, don't you?
He's been guest there a number of times.
He's been a guest, you've been a guest, podcasting. Yeah. And Phil says the only time he's ever been trolled is when he got told off for being too positive. And I'm like, yeah, tick. Fulfills our values. You can never be too positive when you're working with us. So, positivity, credibility, I think is super important, especially in the world of HR tech at the moment. I think there's a lot of things promised that aren't delivered. And, that upsets me as someone who's been doing this for 20 odd years and have seen a lot of things come around. And I'm not saying also we get it perfect. Sometimes that doesn't always happen, but we do our best. And then care, I want to personally work in an organization that, cares about our clients, cares about our people, cares about the planet, cares about our partners, and cares about the industry, actually. That's super important to me. So I think, that's our watch, what's important to us and what makes us stand out from anyone else. But the thing that most people then don't do is define the how, which is how do we deliver this on a daily basis? And for us, that's a number of behaviors that sit under each value, which we check in with each other. We might be 3 founders, but I've got mine tomorrow, actually. We all have quarterly conversations using Korero about, am I living these values? Am I fulfilling my work? What good looks like in our organization is, are you hitting your rocks? Because we use EOS, so we call them rocks, not holes. Are you hitting your rocks? Are you behaving in the way that you want to? And actually, again, with because we use EOC, it's what we call GWC. So do I get it? Do I know what my job is? Do I want it? Am I super passionate, enthusiastic about it? And am I, oh God, what's the word? It's gone out of my head, menopause brain. Am I capable? Or do I have the capability? I think it's capability. It means that anyway. Do I have the time?
I can't remember the exact word, but I think you are spot on. Yeah, the concept is right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that, isn't it? So we, in a business of 5 people, we use Korero regularly to check in on each other and have those conversations, because we just don't have them day to day. And we're super clear on what our purpose is, what our values are, and what are the behaviors. And again, you can call them different things. I've got ethoses and pillars and, all kinds of stuff, but the principle is the same. We know why we're here, what's important to us, and how we need to deliver that.
Yeah, and that really, as a business, helps you to navigate and understand what you need to build and develop, as it, because that becomes your compass then, 100%. No matter what. And it's about getting it down. And I also call it, you call it, what is important to us, or how do we do it around here? And I also call it a bit like, how do we actually navigate complexity, because it will change and the plan would have to change. And actually these questions, or the quality of the questions you're asking on that journey to deliver the vision, the mission, whatever you call it, your purpose, is really important. And that's actually where the feedback comes in again, which I thought was really interesting. We had another conversation where you made me think, actually, if it's not just the senior management team, we talk about the CEO, the ops director that's asking really, high quality question. Actually, the whole organization starts to ask themselves question, what can it not become then? Because suddenly then we're all asking better questions, and therefore we accelerating the speed of the journey, I guess. And people are more likely to stay, and that's why you're gonna achieve the things you want to achieve.
Yeah, and we call it leaders at all levels. As soon as somebody starts to work with you, as soon as you have just one person reporting into you, you are now a role model for leadership within that organization. And how you act, how you behave, how you role model that, you now have a responsibility, not just you and your job. It is you yourself as a leader and the people around you, and knowing what that looks like in an organization is also something that we sometimes work on. It might not be the behaviors that we need to exhibit as leaders, often don't necessarily sit under the values. So, there might be cases in some organizations where we have leadership behaviors, and certainly on Korero, where leaders are asked different questions to team members because they have a different set of responsibilities and, a bigger purpose within the organizations to take people on a journey with them. And I think it's such a privilege to be a manager, to be a leader in a business. And I sometimes don't think enough's made of it. It's a real, a lot of people when they start their careers, and certainly before when we had the business, it's what people wanted. It's like, oh, when can I be a manager? When can I be a manager? And it's like, well, you need to be ready, and you need to have understood what it takes to be a really good leader. And that's not always easy. It's not always easy, especially when you're under pressure. We see that in kitchens, right?
Yeah. And I think one thing is to get the title. Another thing is to, in principle, being able to deliver what is expected in that role besides the results. And that's really where we get to the conversation, the ability to have conversation with people and asking the right questions at the right time and see them before they actually maybe sometimes see they have a need, when you talk about their career, for example. What is the mission for you guys? What is the ultimate goal of your journey? Because I guess, as I understood from the intro, this is just an extension of what you already have done. There's nothing new. You're on the same mission. Yeah. What would you like to, what story have you told in 10 years time?
Oh my gosh.
20 years time?
We'd like to, 20 years time, I hope I'll be on an island somewhere, sipping a cocktail. Maybe in 10 if I'm lucky. No. I think for us, we want to enable as many people as possible to have these great conversations and it just be a part of how we do things here. And, using our technology would be nice. Our 10-year goal is for 1 million people to be using our technology to have conversations. So that's where we're going. So no pressure, Phil Street, to come to help us do that, because I'm a bit scatty. So yeah, we're definitely on a journey to, I suppose, get Korero out to the wider world. Since 2023, we've redeveloped the software, and we lost a few clients in the sort of the changeover between the old company and the new company. And, touch wood, we haven't lost a client since. So I hope we're doing something right. And, we're slowly starting to get our name out there a little bit, but we have no marketing function at the moment, although somebody, the lovely Kathy Dybel, is helping us with our marketing at the moment. Because I think we have a really good product, but we don't necessarily shout about it enough. I think I've just done it for so long now. I just assume everyone's doing this stuff, but they're not. And we integrate with a lot of other systems. So we integrate with Forth, we integrate with Harry. We're just about to integrate with Sona. We integrate with White Vivo, which is a comms app. We can push through Slack. We can push through Microsoft. We're one part of a much bigger sort of tech stack, or part of the employee experience. When you look at the employee experience and having technology that underpins each part of it, we want to be a part of that, but we don't want people just using our tech because it has to all join up. In my ideal world, any employee would just go onto their phone and be able to access everything that they need to and not have to log into lots of different places. And there are obviously tools that do that, but we can, if you want to go one step further, we're sort of a tool that you can then bolt on to do it really well, to do it properly, which is to say that other businesses don't, but
I know exactly what you mean. And it's about also doing what you do really well instead of trying to do a million things, which I actually think is it's an ongoing conversation around technologies. And then I wanted to ask you about, because something that everybody talks about right now.
Yes.
I actually did an interview a couple of weeks ago with one of the co-founders of Sonar around AI and its impact on the hospitality industry when it comes to both profitability and the ability to make better decisions. But what is your view on AI? And I don't know if that's really part of your platform, or what do you think about that and hospitality? Because it's been called the first tech digitalization was called the saver of the industry in the early days of the pandemic, and now we're talking about AI. That's going to be the next thing that saves us.
I mean, we're using AI in the background to build. It's allowing us to build way faster, which is amazing. So Steve and Sean, who look after the tech for our business, they're using it in ways that I can't even begin to start talking about. So we're using it in the background to build at the moment. As far as in the user experience, we're being really considered about it. I think when it comes to comms in general, we communicate how we get our stuff, how we get people onto the Korero platform. In an ideal world, we communicate that through a comms app. Now, comms apps like WorkVivo or Blink or, what Workplace was, I think they're great. What Sonar is doing, what Uda is doing, what Pizza Pilgrims have done in-house is utilizing the concept of the agent. So this year is the year of the agent. And I feel like at the moment, there's this sort of move between, do we go for a traditional comms platform or do we go for something that's really super interactive and, you can build that yourself as Pizza Pilgrims have, or you can use a company like Uda so that people will go on and have one app. And in my ideal world, it looks like people can go on and they can find out how many shifts they've got, what their holiday is, what they're going to get paid this week, what their rota is, that it's time to have a career conversation, that they need to do X, Y, Z development. That does count on a lot of systems coming together and playing nicely, even if you are one complete system. And it also takes quite a lot of work to get all that information in the first place. What I would really like to see AI used for is to stop people having to do the boring shit, to be quite honest, and spend more time having sit down face-to-face conversations with people. Like that's what I would like about. I would like all this tech, all this AI to free up time so that nobody says to me, I haven't got time to speak to my people because I'm too busy. And it's like, well, okay, no, you have got time to speak to your people. How will we use it in ours? Probably to help guide the conversation. So something that Steve did as an experiment was look at what so people plan. We'd like people to plan before the meeting. So we would like to be able to pull more stuff in so they've got more stuff to think about with their planning. But secondly, when they go to have the meeting, what Steve has done is looked at what people have answered recently to what has happened before, and then giving the managers a real, it is a great idea to ask XYZ because so-and-so has said ABC, for example. So, if somebody has written that they're not feeling that great physically at the moment, we would use AI to go and maybe give the manager the tools to be able to have that conversation properly and give them hints and tips about it. It structures the meeting at the moment, but it doesn't read what's being said and then pull that out. So we're fairly close to that. The analytics side, I would say we'll probably do some more stuff in AI with the analytics in that we've got so much data. So again, being able to just go into the analytics and ask a question, how many people are at risk of leaving from Liverpool, or how many people, are ready to move on from Birmingham, or I've got a vacancy for X, who do you suggest? That type of stuff. That's how I see it working in our tool. We are still relatively early days. I think Matt from Uda describes it as, before the end of 2024, that AI was like a misbehaving toddler, and now it's like an enthusiastic intern. There's so much more that we need to learn. And also, what's striking me more and more as I'm finding more and more about it is that to train a language model is the energy of a car for its entire lifetime. You know, we're at this point where people are much more aware about long-term sustainability and the future. And, you know, if you look at the amount of organizations that are working towards B Corp, how does AI fit into that? If every single piece of technology you're using has got an agent, you're calling stuff the whole time. It's going to make it very expensive for potentially the supplier or the client to use. But do we really need it? You know, at the moment, isn't it exciting that you can put everything into ChatGPT and it will tell you like that? But really, I read something the other day, which was quite scary, that because we're asking it, we're saying please and thank you to it the whole time, the amount of money by being nice to it, because as a human, we're all a bit scared it's going to take over. And so we're nice to it. But by saying please and thank you, the extra money that's costing in general is mind blowing, because we're being polite to AI. Wow, because we're just, you know, we've got something and it's all new and exciting, and how we're going to use it, how we're going to use it. I still don't know we're anywhere near knowing what good looks like in terms of AI use, what responsible use looks like. Like we're learning, and that's fine. And I'm okay that we're learning. Like a lot of people are like, oh my God, we're behind. I'm like, let's see how it pans out. Let's look what's out there. Let's see how we can best use it, but let's not jump into anything too quickly. We're really lucky, right? There's 3 of us. We're super agile. If we decide we want to use it and build it, we can do it tomorrow. But I want to make sure that, and Steve wants to make sure that what we do with it is right and responsible and makes a difference and steers people towards having conversations. Like, I don't want to be in a world where you're not having human interaction. I think that's really important. What it can be used for is giving you the time and the space to have the human interactions. You know, technology aside, obviously I advocate you should use Korero for career conversations, but actually it's the conversation that's important.
I think it's really interesting to say, because I totally agree with you. It has to, if you can save your time so you get more brain power. I use 3 different tools, 2 of them to run the podcast there, to be totally honest, because it saves a lot of time. But then how do you use that time then to have either better interviews, do more, you get actually better time to research as well, because suddenly your AI tool can help you researching. Yeah. And it makes you aware about things you couldn't have in your head because you're overloaded, because everybody's overloaded. So how can you get the overload away? And then actually, one of the things I've really found out where it's helpful is can it actually take jobs away from people where it doesn't add value in the front line? Yeah. For managers specifically. And I think it's very interesting I didn't ask you in the beginning, but how do you actually suggest people use the conversation? Do you suggest them to do them online as we are doing now? Or do you really say, sit down, this is the tool you have, but you have the conversation in face-to-face, yeah?
Have the conversation face-to-face. You know, you can use your phone. We're looking at, and again, it's another difficult one that we're debating. And I talked to Matt from User about it quite a bit and talked to our guys about it. And this is the concept of recording the conversation for the purpose. And, you know, in some ways, yes, amazing. One of the biggest barriers we get is now we don't have time to write it up afterwards. That said, there are just some times when you just want something to be a conversation and it be confidential and it not be listened to. And, you know, I think a really good skill is being able to actively listen, as you have done. I've gone off on complete monologue tangents and you've pulled out the bits that we need to continue with. And you have a ability to actively listen to somebody, to take in what they're going to say, to question that a bit further, to take the conversation in the direction you want it to go in. I think that being able to do that is a real skill, and one that if we're not careful might get lost if we record everything that we're saying and we're getting ChatGPT or whatever other AI is available. You know, if we're getting AI to listen to our conversations and pull out the actions, and I don't know, I'm not against it, by the way. Like I've used it for having meetings and stuff, but I don't know how I would feel about having a really sort of deep and candid career conversation with somebody and it being recorded. I wouldn't mind it, for example. I wonder if it would be something like, okay, let's just recap that conversation and pull out the actions, and then you'd press record or press whatever you press or do whatever. I think that might be a way around it. I think it's interesting how different people interpret a conversation. You have my truth, you have that truth, and then you have the truth. Is the truth really getting captured by AI, or is it biased? Do we know? What bias is there in AI? I think there's so many more questions than there are answers at the moment. And I'm 100% behind AI. I just think we need to think about it as well, and think about how technology impacts the conversation, because we need to record it. That's the thing. If we knew that everybody was having these conversations and then we're doing the right thing as a result, then you probably wouldn't need a platform like ours. But we don't. We know that people aren't having the conversations, that employees aren't getting the feedback that they need, that people don't understand them. We know that managers find it difficult to have difficult conversations, that people are scared of pulling up people on performance issues. People are really nervous these days about having challenging conversations. You can deliver any message with kindness. That can be done, but it's a skill. We need to teach people that, and organisations need this data to be able to succession plan properly, to be able to look at what development people need. You can't pick that out from conversations. Maybe you will be able to in the future, but yeah, it's a conversation that we're having continually. This conversation I'm having with you about what's the best way to do it.
Yeah,
please send your messages to me on LinkedIn if you have any ideas. Anybody that listens to this, because I would love to hear them.
Yeah, because I think it's really interesting with AI, again, taking it down to a manager leader level. How can you use it in a way? It's like, if you feed your AI with the right thing. And then, of course, it's really interesting, you said, again, the financial and the planet implications of us using these tools. Nobody has talked about them. They are actually quite severe. You're absolutely right. But coming back to the manager again, where you can use exactly getting that clarity of perspective on some things sometimes, because you can't have it. So I call it also my second brain sometimes. Like, okay, there's times where there's just so much I need to maybe analyze a document or something.
Yes.
But you still have to be critical when you read it through. But actually, it was not just about saving time. It was just about, oh yeah, that's what's about. That's the core three things. Because in leadership, it's all about 20% that give 80. So I instruct my AI, what are the 20% that get this best outcome if you read this very complicated report or sales figures, and then you get it out. Oh, that gives sense. But I would also add.
Yeah, and I think that is where we're going with it, that AI would help read anything that the employee had put in and say, it looks like you need to talk about these three things, and these are some hints, and in our business, this is what we have that can help or signpost, and then the manager can have the conversation. So it should inform the conversation, maybe not necessarily be part of it.
Yeah, really interesting. And I don't think we're going to have the answers here, but we're definitely we're definitely asking some questions that's quite important, because I think that I agree with you. It's about the quality. We need to ask questions about this, not say it's not bad, because it will come. It is here, and it will evolve, and it will be a tool we have to face as humans and at work as well. Just about how do we use it in the most sensible way on all levels.
It's technology for good, right? That's all we want to do. And I think that if every single piece of tech has an agent that they've trained, that's a huge commitment in terms of, again, going back to this, that we had it before, I don't remember before, you could organize your apps on your phone, and you started having this massive build-up of apps. Is it going to be the same for agents? Every piece of technology has got an agent for learning, an agent for rotoring, an agent for career conversations, an agent, like, it needs to go into one place. You don't want a million different agents for work. You want one. Yeah. And so therefore, if you've got one agent, then everything should be pushing towards that. Now, whether the business decides they're going to build the agent, and as tech businesses, we then push into that, that's brilliant, or whether there's a third party that does it. But if we all start building agents, you're going to end up in this, everybody wants to be the app on someone's phone. And that's where it becomes a war with technology suppliers, not actually what is best for the client. Is that everybody wants to be the one-stop shop, the one that gets all the business. Well, that just doesn't sit well with me. That's not the best thing for the person using it, or the business, or the leader. What is the best thing? And from my perspective, I don't have the power to sort of say that. We're one little cog in a really big wheel. So it's ethically, it's what do we do as sort of HR tech suppliers? How do we bring it together to create something really good? And that's where I work with other tech businesses to look at what could it look like if we joined up and gave a one solution that gave you everything that you needed, but uses less energy as possible, I suppose.
Really interesting. Taking the conversation a bit in a different direction, I wanted to ask you about your learnings, especially the last couple of years. What is what is the learning that actually have changed the belief you had or a habit for the better in business or self-leadership in the last couple of years?
I think that as you mentioned, you knew me through LinkedIn. So I think over the last couple of years, certainly since starting Korero, I've become more comfortable with putting myself out there, and that took quite a lot. And it's a bit like going to the gym. It's consistency, and it feels really horrible sometimes, and sometimes you don't want to do it. But the benefit that I've got from building a network through a professional, through sort of professional social media, I suppose. I'm not particularly on normal social media, but building my LinkedIn profile, and just so the more you do it, the more you get from it, I guess. And it's really helped with my confidence, like super helped with my confidence. I now feel like when I walk into a room of people that I don't know, I feel much more confident from just posting on LinkedIn, which sounds really weird because one's completely online and one's face to face. So, but I think like showing up every day on there was very hard at first, and now much easier. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned over the last year is just do it anyway. Only 3% of people that go on LinkedIn post content, and about the same interact with it. So I just think, wow, do you know what? I'm doing better than 97% of the population. And if people don't like it, then don't follow me and don't go on LinkedIn, because that's what it is, right? Yeah. But I find it, I've built a really, I've met you through it. I've met some great people, Michelle Morano, Sarah Clark, Trudy. I know way, Trudy Parr from Molly's. I know way better through LinkedIn. And we did with my friend Jodie, who I referenced before. She's got a program, and we're all in a community, and that community is amazing. So when you're somebody that, although I've got people that I work with, I don't have anyone that I work with in sort of the sales, marketing, networking space. So to have other people that are trying to build and push small businesses or themselves forward, and just knowing that sort of people are in your corner and recommending you and supporting you. Abby from 68 People is another one. Just having friends in the industry, it means so much. So I think that's the thing that I've really learned is important for me over the last year or so.
And I think it's really good. I had a similar reflection. It's about you become better at what you do by writing about it. If totally. What you're doing on LinkedIn, and actually that's where I actually bought into it, because I thought why should I do this? And I found out the same stats as you, that it's only 3% creating content. Oh, that's really interesting. I'm doing it anyway with the podcast. How can I actually start? And then you get more comfortable when you are then as a leader on the spot, discussing something or have to present out of the blue. And these things happen. You are questioned, you are interrogated about things. then you get better at presenting because you have already written it. Clarity about purpose and direction. Again, back to what we talked about earlier in the conversation. So I love that. It's really good reflection. And you don't have to post every day. I just want to say to people, if you did it once a week, you will also get incremental better. I don't have the time right now to do it every day, so I actually do it 3 times a week, and I've simplified some. And now I have a system for it, like you have, where just, okay, I have to do it. Oh, I forgot, I'm not ready. Then I know within an hour I can create a week's content because.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And then you go into your notes and you find something, say, oh yeah, I never wrote about that, and then you do it. And I think it's such a good way of, and you never know when it's going to pay back. And that's quite an interesting thing about it. It's like this drip, 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 drip. And then suddenly you meet somebody. Oh, I've seen you written this on LinkedIn. I really thought that was interesting. Should we have a conversation? Or it could be any random thing that happens with this. This is a bit like, gardening. You don't see the full garden before you planted the seed and put the water on them and fertilizer, whatever, yeah?
Exactly. At first, when I first started doing it regularly, the main aim was, oh my gosh, I've got no way to market or sell this product. So, I need to get myself out there a little bit more. And actually, that's not what I've got from it. What I've got from it is confidence, finding my own voice, building a network of friends and partners and, people. And yeah, like you, I walked into a networking event and somebody came up to me. This is so cringy. I was like, oh, are you Jo Harley? I was like, yeah. And they're like, oh, we were just talking about one of your LinkedIn posts. And it just made me giggle, because you just think, oh my God, as you do, you say you sort of put it out there and you think, okay, well, I'm open, I'm going to put stuff out there. But I don't actually really think many people read it. And then you find out from the strangers of places that people do. And yeah, you just get into it, don't you? It's funny. And it's not what you expect that you get from it.
And actually, one thing I wanted to ask you earlier in the conversation, I forgot I can actually ask you now, because I read a post about the best place to work.
Yes.
You did. And
yes.
Is there anything we should actually, because there's probably operator thinking, I think you mentioned most of the things they need to be aware of, but any learning from that best place to work survey that just came out together with the Cater last week?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. So the results came out last week. So we do it every year. It's been going for 11 years. It's a bit of a different survey because the way that it works is that we ask people what's important to them about coming to work. And they can pick from 40 subjects or add their own. And then they do a little values elicitation or elicitation thing where, it's what's most important, freedom or fun, image or money. So they end up with their top 6 things that are important to them about coming to work. So completely individual. And then they rate their employer on it. And then we also ask them questions as well. So it's quite different in that it's about, how does my employer do on the things that are important to me, not necessarily on the things that they think are important to me. So that's why it's a little bit different. So what's interesting about this year is that, so when we look at what makes the best place to work, so what's important to people, the first one is that they work in a positive and welcoming work environment. The second is that they work for a business that cares about their people. Third, respectful work-life balance. Fourth, that leaders are supportive, positive and inspiring. And fifth, that every individual is valued. And 6 is part of a team that works well and supports each other. So all of those things, that's what people think, that's what's important to people about coming to work. But then what are we good at? So then what are the things that are rated highly? So what are businesses good at? So the things that the businesses are good at is having a great company reputation. So people think that their business has a great reputation, that people achieve together as a team, that there are clear company values, they're known as a great place to work, they're paid accurately on time, and a great intro to the organisation. So that's the things that we should celebrate, that we're good at. But the things that could be improved in hospitality, it won't be a surprise that pay is number 1 and was last year as well. But also information is shared clearly, that there are clear career pathways, effective tools and systems, that people are involved in decisions about their roles, and that performance is measured against the right behaviours. So 5 out of the 6 things that we could improve could be solved by Korero. Just saying, I don't set it up to be that way. It just so happens. But I think what's really interesting is the things that we're good at are what people would traditionally call sort of more the fluffy stuff. Whereas things we need to improve are the basics. So I think where things have changed over the years is that I would say we need to get the basics right. Like we need to be paying people properly what they deserve. We need to be communicating properly. We need to make sure people know where they're going in their careers, that we have good systems in place and that people are communicated to and have, involved in decisions, and that we know what good looks like. It sounds like this stuff should all be in place, but, these are all businesses that have entered an award that is called Best Places to Work in Hospitality. And yet these are areas that the employees companies still think need improving. So that's really interesting. Another thing I did before sort of releasing this last week is I looked at, we've been doing it for 11 years. And one of the biggest changes, I chucked the data into AI, as you can do now. That's one thing it is useful for. And over time, people feeling that because we asked some killer questions as well, and one of them is around businesses being fair and equitable. So, basically what they're doing around ED&I, and that's dropped 30% in the last 11 years. And I don't know whether it's where businesses are standing still, but the expectation of people has risen, I wonder. But yeah, that was quite a thing, because happiness hasn't changed over 11 years. It still sits at around the sort of the 65-ish,
Okay, wow.
65%. Yeah. Whereas, fair equity has dropped. So yeah, I think, the world is a crazy place right now, isn't it? It doesn't matter what your politics are. I think we can all recognize that. So I think there's something to be said in the fact that, we do need to still work hard to be fair and equitable and treat people as individuals, and that kind of thing. So yeah, that was interesting. Employee Net Promoter Score is plus 66, which is super, super high, really high. But just remember, these are the people that are putting themselves in for being a best place to work in hospitality. I'm sure most of your listeners know, but, good is anything above 50. Anything between 0 and 50 is totally fine. Start looking at it in a bit more detail if it's 0 or below. So, I think they're quite interesting things. Overall engagement is 85 on this survey. Hospitality as a whole sits at around, I think, about 70. If we can get an industry stat, we are not as good as creative industries and finance, but we're way, way better than healthcare and teaching. Bless.
I guess it's about, you can't rest your laurels. You just have to continue. And this is the best of the best, because they put in their bet on this award. So they're already operating at a very high level, and they are fine tuning the machine, I guess, all the time.
Absolutely.
So if there is probably people that could do some massive jumps by just doing the things you mentioned again, and it's very aligned with the first thing you said in the first part of the interview. These are basics we need as an organization and leaders to do.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's it is a tough market at the moment. The biggest thing I see is founder-led businesses starting super, super strong, being very, very clear about who they are, and, being really great places to work. And then, growth. I've yet to see somebody smash it out the park in terms of culture and people stuff above 20 odd sites. I'm talking smashing it out the park, not just being good. It's really difficult. Also, the thing to remember about best places to work in hospitality is, for whatever reason, I'm not quite sure, but it's quite hotel heavy. And I think that more people go to work in a hotel that are career hospitalitarian. What do we call them? Anyway, career hospitality people who want to have a career in hospitality, whereas high street is traditionally filled with a lot more sort of people that are transitioning through something else. So that might make a difference as well to the demographic. But yeah, it's interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, and let's definitely take a look at that. If you are building a new people strategy, there could be some questions you need to ask yourself there. So a question back to yourself. We're a couple more questions, and we're tying up the conversation. But one of them I always ask people because I think it's a super interesting question. I actually learned from a guest that was asking me this: what is your fondest food memory?
My fondest.
Yeah, fondest food memory. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, my fondest food memory. Do you know what? I think it is when I was at college, every break time, I used to go and get a hot chocolate and a piece of shortbread. And I swear it's the best shortbread I've ever tasted. And I've never come across shortbread like it. And I love shortbread. And I feel like I'm on a mission to find or cook shortbread as good as this. But that hot chocolate, I think it was such a treat because, it was way back in time. And yeah, you couldn't just buy food in the same way. And just being able to go and get this hot chocolate and the shortbread sort of in a break at college was, I have really fond memories of doing that and feeling like it was really decadent and grown up for some reason.
And I guess
so random. I don't know why that popped into my head.
But I guess that takes you to a time where that you were early in your career and you were like trying to prepare yourself for the world outside the bubble.
Yeah, I think it's sort of an independence thing, sort of having my own money. At that point, I just learned to drive. I was driving myself to, that sort of transition period between being at home and being an adult. But yeah, and also something very, very comforting about shortbread.
Yeah, love it. What is the one question you wished I asked you, and what would it be, and what would you have answered?
The one question I wish you'd have asked me. Oh my gosh, I think you're such a good host. You're such a good questioner. I think we've covered sort of most things that I would want to be asked. Oh gosh. Oh, that's thrown me. I don't know.
I can throw you one if you want, and then you can say So what does Korero means?
What does Korero mean? So Korero is a Maori word that means having good, positive conversations, but that's not the direct translation. So we wanted a word. We wanted a word that meant something. And, we're all about having good, positive, caring conversations. So that's what it means.
Yeah, I love that. And you thought about that even in the brand name. And there's so many brands that has a name, and there's not really a story or a piece of looking into why it's all actually called what it's called in a way. And it's an action word. It's about positive conversations as well. I love that. So where could people find out more about the work you're doing, and where can they connect with you? Where's the best place to go, Jo?
Oh, go onto LinkedIn. I'm always there. So on LinkedIn or jo@korero.io. And our website is hellokorero.co.
Great. We'll put all that in the show notes. And thank you so much, Jo, for coming and talking about your journey, all your learnings, your perspective. I'll send you and the team power and energy to make the industry better.
Yes.
Through people.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's the only way it can be, isn't it? Through people.